Hello everyone, welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In today's video, we're going to have a look at a couple of lists I came up with for the Legion of Blood. And this is actually a video suggestion by, I believe it's pronounced Manastine. If that's pronounced wrong, I'm sorry for getting your name wrong there. However, thank you very much for your suggestion. So, similar to the Legion of Night video I did, we're going to have a list that includes Neferata, the Mortarch of Blood, and we're also going to have a list that does not. Now, from a quick oversight from when I've been looking at building lists for the legions, particularly the Legion of Night and the Legion of Blood, I do not think it is necessary to have a Mortarch in either of these, because as it is very thematic, I feel like there are better generals out there where they can make better use of the command traits rather than the specific named characters. But I thought it's still important to come up with lists that include the Mortarch, just because, like I say, it's very narratively driven and a lot of people are going to do it. So to start with, we're going to have a look at Neferata's list. So I've included Neferata, the Mortarch of Blood. She's obviously the general, as she has to be. For the Law of the Dead spell she's got is Overwhelming Dread, and that's the one you pick a enemy unit within 18 inches, and then they have -1 to their hit and to bravery characteristics. Now, the idea of this list is it's probably mainly building on the making the enemy as minuses to hit as possible, and also making the most out of how many attacks your vampire lords on zombie dragons are going to get. So we've got Neferata, Mortarch of Blood, so with her Lord of the Dead, Overwhelming Dread. We are then followed by a vampire lord and zombie dragon with a Death Lance, Shield and Chalice, because why wouldn't you take the Shield and Chalice? And I think the Death Lance is just flat out better than the sword. On average anyway, doing 2 damage rather than D3. Yes, it's missing out on an extra attack than the sword. However, I just prefer the reliability of 2 damage, and also when it gets the charge, which this monster moves 14 inches, so it's more than likely going to get the charge, it does 3 damage with the lance, so it's pretty nice there. And then for an artifact, it's got Soulbound Garnets. Now this just gives you reroll save rolls of 1, so quite, and a passive ability. Might not sound crazy exciting as some of the other artifacts that are in the Legion of Blood to choose from. However, I think having reroll save rolls of 1 when you've got a 3-up standard save is really good, so that's why I've taken that. And then for his Law of the Vampires, we've got the Amaphime Orb. Now this is very popular amongst probably a lot of you out there because of the potential it can do, and I've talked about this before. So it's, you draw a 12-inch line from the caster into any direction you want, and then the line's only like 1mm wide, so basically it's as narrow as you can get, and any unit, friend or foe, underneath that line you roll a dice for, and on a 4-up that enemy unit takes d6 mortal wounds. So when I say that enemy unit, I mean of course it could be yours, but if you're playing right, you're not going to get your guys in the crossfire here. So d6 mortal wounds, yes, it has to happen on a 4-up, but still that's a really good potential, especially if you target, let's say only a couple enemy units get underneath this line. On average, that's still going to be one of those units is going to suffer d6 mortal wounds, and that's not taken into effect if you the Locus of Shaiish ability off, which is if you cast one of the Law of the Dead spells on a 9, and this is an unmodified roll, so just a flat 9 you rolled, you get to resolve the effects of the spell twice. So yeah, like I say, if even if you just target one unit and you manage to resolve the effect twice, on average you should get it off once, and then obviously that multiplies with how many enemy units you get in that range. So that's why I'm a big fan of that. And yeah, I mean, it has potential to do nothing, but also has potential to do great things. So the next leader we have, and the last leader, is another Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. So he's got, again, the Death Lance, Shield and Chalice, and the Law of the Vampires he's got is Vile Transference. Now he's got this spell just to try and keep either himself or the other Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon or Neferata just a bit more survivable by making the enemy units take mortal wounds, but then the mortal wounds they take will heal one of your death units nearby. I'll just read it out just for clarification. So, Vile Transference has casting value 7. It's successfully cast. Pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of the caster that is visible to them, and a friendly death unit within 6 inches of that enemy unit. The enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Then for each of these wounds that has been allocated and not negated, you can heal 1 wound allocated to the friendly unit. So, again, like I say, you select a death unit within 6 inches of that enemy unit. Because it's just death unit and everything is always within range of itself when it comes to abilities and things like that. If this Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon is nearby, he can put it onto himself, so he can heal those wounds. I did think the Soul Harvest was best for this. However, if you don't have, Arcane's command ability to make the Soul Harvest 9-inch and it's only 3 inches, Vile Transference is better, even for just healing Neferata. And that was kindly pointed out in the comments of my last video, so I appreciate that, guys, and I've learned something there. So, after we get through our leaders, because that's it, we've only got 3 leaders here. However, they are, each a powerhouse of their own. They're chucking out so many attacks, particularly the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragons, both of them, because of the battle trait you get in this army, where they get +1 attacks to all their weapons, and this includes the dragon themselves, of course, because this is more recently, well, this wasn't put in the recent FAQ, which, if it wasn't meant to affect the dragons, it surely would have been put in there. So we know safely that this is always going to affect the dragons as well, and that's what really makes this quite nasty. And then we move on to our units, which is our battle line, essentially. So we've got 2 units of 40 skeleton warriors. They've got ancient spears. I'm sure you guys know what they do by now. I've talked about it enough, how good they are bunking on objectives and holding them, and then you can use the grave sites to heal them. And then you might notice that, because I've only got 3 leaders here, it might be quite hard to heal back those skeleton warrior units. However, you don't have a White King amongst skeleton warriors, or a necromancer, or just a normal vampire lord, just to be a constant bringing them back. However, the vampire lord on Zombie Dragons, they've got, I'm not going to say a really good range for their Invocation of Death ability. However, they've got a competent range on it. I think it's either 12, I think it's 12 inches. I want to say it's 15 inches, but I'm going to say it's, play safe and say 12 inches. Which, even if these dragons are, right, in the teeth of the enemy and your skeleton warriors are quite far bit behind, they still should be in range to bring back those models. And then Neferata's one is 18 inches, and it's 4 units you get to pick, so that's pretty good there. And then our next battle line is just 5 direwolves. Now that might not look like anything compared to the 40 skeletons. However, I really like just having a unit of 5 direwolves, just keeping on the back objective. If there's no threats from the enemy being able to deep strike you, they can stay there, they can hold it. If they need to respond to anything, they're not like the most combat heavy unit, are they? Because they're just 5 direwolves. However, they can quickly get to places. If like I say, if your back objective is fine, no one can take it from you, nothing can deep strike, and it's one of those battle plans where after controlling an objective, you can then move on and still control it. In that situation, let's say one of the middle objectives is under threat because an enemy unit is slightly outnumbering you on it, so you can quickly run these direwolves over there to help out your skeletons just to bring up the numbers. They're a really nice fast unit, and I think they're really, really cheap for what they can do. Our next and last unit are Bat Swarms, and this is just a unit of 2 Bat Swarms for 80 points. Now, might seem a bit like a random addition to the list, however, the reason I like Bat Swarms, it's just there to make your enemies shooting -1, because enemy units within 12 inches of the Bat Swarms, when they go to shoot in the shooting phase, are -1 to hit. Now, I think this is a little bit essential for how I've built this list here, because Neferata, she's pretty cool. She can do quite a few combat, abilities and so on. However, she's only got 11 wounds and 4 up save, which makes her a lot less survivable compared to these Vampire Lords and Zombie Dragons. Yes, she's got lots of ways to heal wounds. However, I feel like they're not as... like a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon's got 14 wounds, so that means that it's got more time to heal those wounds. However, Neferata, if the enemy just really wants to shoot off the board, turn 1 or turn 2, they more than likely can do that with not too much difficulty. So just making the enemy hopefully -1 to hit in shooting is really useful. And that's the list. It comes in at 1980 points, so there's a chance you might get a triumph. I used to be quite OCD heavy and trying to get always onto the 2000 mark. However, after going to a tournament a few times with a 1980 point list, probably at least half my games I'm getting triumphs, which when you're talking about if you've got a Vampire Lord and a Zombie Dragon on your list, or even Neferata, just being able to reroll hit rolls, or wound rolls, or save rolls, whatever it might be, once in the game is really useful and can really, I don't want to say change the tide of the game, but it really can change the outcome of that combat you're in. And if you change the outcome of that combat, it could change the result of the game. So very useful. So with this list, you might notice that I'm not really taking much notice of the making the enemies minus their bravery. I mean, there's a few things in there from the Skeleton Warriors and just from being in the Legion of the Blood and from the Overwhelming Dread. However, I haven't capitalised on it I haven't put any Tomb Banshees in or any Terrorgeist. However, in the enemy's Batroc phase, I will just reap the passive rewards of being from the Legion of Blood and having a few minuses to their bravery. So a few other things to mention, obviously, because this is Legions of Nagash, all the extra spells my 3 leaders have, the Overwhelming Dread, Amplifying Orb, and Vile Transference, could all, revolve the effect of that twice. So if we're taking Overwhelming Dread, for an example, Neferata with a command ability makes the enemy a -1 to hit if they're within, it's either 15 or 16 inches of her to start with, and then goes down for the damage she takes. So a -1 to hit there. I'd say a fairly reliable -1 to hit from this spell. Potentially, if you're lucky, a -2 to hit. So let's look at the best case scenario. So, that's -3 to hit, 2 from the spell, 1 from a command ability. And then if the enemy's got shooting, it's another, -1. So that's a -4 to hit. If, of course, you put that spell on the same unit and it'll, just target all those monsters to hit on one unit. But however, if the enemy's got a Death Star unit, can be really, really useful. So that's just a list I've came up with using Neferata. Of course, you might be able to come up with a more competitive list or something like that. This is literally just me just quickly spending the morning seeing what I can do with Neferata. However, I think, even it might not be the most competitive, I think even if you used to take this to a tournament or something, you would have a lot of fun because, the enemy could snipe off Neferata with not too much difficulty if they get the first turn and then, they're good at winning priorities and so on. However, the enemy's got quite a few things to deal with here because, sure, they can just snipe off Neferata and then you've lost your command ability, so no longer, making the enemy -1 to hit, or you can't put Inspiring Presence on one of your Skeleton Warriors units, as that's a really good command ability, as I always say. However, they've still got 2 Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragons to deal with a silly amount of attacks. Then they've got to deal with your 2 blocks of 40 Skeleton Warriors, and obviously your 5 die rules, whatever, they're not bothered about that, and then your 2 Bat Swarms, they're not really bothered about that. And the good thing about Bat Swarms is that at the start of the game, your enemy's going to, if they've got a lot of shooting, they're either not going to know what Bat Swarms do, and then obviously they won't really take any notice of them. However, if they do know what Bat Swarms do, which they probably will, they will either try to ignore them because they're really, really basic and they don't want to waste anything on them, or they're just going to wipe them out to get rid of that -1 to shooting. So if they wipe them out by targeting most of their shooting on them just to kill them, sure, they probably wiped off your Bat Swarms to the face of the earth because they haven't got a save. Apart from a deathless save if they're in range of one of your heroes. However, that just means they've wasted a lot of their shooting in one turn on those Bat Swarms. So 80 points have just been deleted, but that's like almost like a turn's worth of shooting. None of your other guys have had to suffer. So I think they're a very good distraction unit, and like I said, the enemy doesn't really know what they do, or they can't really bother to do with them because they just don't think they're worth it. And they've got shooting, that -1 to hit is just going to be, ticking away at them all the time, and it's going to make them really, really annoyed. So, like I say, that shows a sort of, a simple list I've came up with. I mean, there's been a lot of people just talking about, I just run 3 Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragons and then a bunch of skeletons, and that's pretty much it, and maybe a Tomb Banshee chucked in there and whatever. However, I just wanted to basically come up with almost the same list as that, but I just wanted to include Neferata in there because, like I say, I do feel like for Some of the legions, I mean, to be honest, with the Legion of Sacrament or Grand Host Nagash, having Nagash in there or Arcan isn't too bad. However, for the Legion of Blood, I think Neferata isn't really essential. However, if you just bought a Star Collecting, Skeleton Horde box set or the Blade of the Blood Queen, huge Battle Force box set, if that's still about, and you think, oh, I really want to build Neferata, I want to, have her in a 2,000 point army, whatever, I want to build up the army. I wanted to give, some sense of how you could use her in just like I'm not even saying this list is that tactical, it's mainly just smack the enemy in the face with so many attacks from those Vampire Lords and Zombie Dragons. So it's a bit more of a fun list, and like I say, I thought it would be important to have a list including Neferata. We then move on to our next list, which is, a non-named character list, as a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon will be the general on this. And then the main part of this list is mainly trying to capitalise on the making the enemy minus their bravery, as I think that could be very, very useful in the Legion of the Blood, and it could be the main thing they play for, other than trying to make Vampire Lords and Zombie Dragons as deadly as they can, like I explained in my last list. So to start with, like I say, we've got the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon as our general. For his command trait, he's got Aura of Dark Majesty, which means enemy units in the combat phase that target him are -1 to hit. He's also equipped with the Death Lance, Shield and Chalice, and then he's got the Soulbound Garnets for his artifact, which again make you reroll save rolls of 1. So already this guy has got making the enemy -1 to hit him, which if the enemy units that obviously do more wounds and things like 6s, if they haven't been buffed to make them do it on 5s, to hit, he's getting rid of their ability to either do more wounds against them or generate extra attacks on the 6 if they're not already buffed, that is. And then for the Law of the Vampires, his spell is the Amplifying Orb, and I've talked why I think this spell is really good. And like I say, it's very potential. It could do nothing, it could be really good, but it's not too risky. It's not as if I pick an example, Curse of Years, for example. I mean, obviously that is the risk and reward of that is much higher. Like, it's incredibly risky. You might not do anything, or you might wipe out a unit. That's not exactly the same as this Amplifying Orb, as this Amplifying Orb is not as high as a risk. You're not always, but a lot of the time you're always going to do some damage. You've got a good possibility of that. So that's the Vampire Lord on a Zombie Dragon. So when he's in combat, he's making the enemy -1 to hit. He's got a 3-up save roll on 1, and he's got a good spell for when he's in the middle of the enemy's face, being able to damage as many enemy units as possible. So he's really there to get stuck into the fight. The next two heroes we have are Necromancers. Now, one of them has the Overwhelming Dread spell, which is from the Law of the Death Mages, which I talked about what Neferata has, which you pick an enemy unit within 18 inches, they are -1 to hit and -1 to their bravery. So again, if you're picking a unit what the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragons is charged into, there'll be -2 to hit him in the combat phase, and -1 bravery. And the -1 to hit might sound like the best thing here. However, as you'll see in the list, I'll be trying to make the enemy as minuses to their bravery as possible. Then the next Necromancer has potentially my favourite spell out of all the Law of the Death Mages, which is Spectral Grasp. Now, Overwhelming Dread is fantastic, and it might potentially be better than Spectral Grasp, or at least it's just as good. However, the reason I like Spectral Grasp is you pick a terrain feature within 18 inches, and enemy units within 3 inches of that terrain feature have to halve their movement characteristic. And in a game where it's so important about movement and getting to objectives and how quickly you can respond to the enemy, being able to halve the enemy's movement is fantastic. And it's not just like a point on the battlefield and it's within 3 inches, it's a terrain feature. So that could be a Sylvaneth Wildwood, for example, where let's just say it's 1 forest base, but that's a huge area of effect around this base if you're on it, and particularly if let's say it's the perfect storm scenario and that happens to be in the enemy's the middle of their army, could just affect loads. And particularly if you go against a Sylvaneth player and let's say they bring up a forest, as they always will, and then a Sylvaneth Wildwood, I know it can contain up to at least 2 Sylvaneth Wildwoods. A Sylvaneth Wildwood can contain up to at least 2 forest bases. Now, I say at least up to 2. It might be 3. So if they set up, 3 of these forests, or 2 of these forest scenery pieces as 1 Sylvaneth Wildwood, if you target it, that's a huge area of effect, and it doesn't affect your guys, just the enemy. So just enemy units there. So I've got my 2 favourite spells in the whole Law of the Death Mages in this list, which is for me personally fantastic. I'm really happy for this, and I really want to try this out to see how it does. And those are our leaders. So the Vampire Lord and Zombie Drag, like I say, is very much a go forward enemy, not just charge on by charging to the enemy by himself. Because I think in a lot of cases that's never really a good idea to do. However, when he's supported with a couple of other things from the list, he can do that. Then we've got a Tomb Banshee as well, which I've got to mention, and that's just there to take advantage of the enemy being minuses to their bravery, just making her scream attack a lot better. And then the Necromancers, like I say, they're there obviously for their spells, and then one of them is mainly there to stay amongst the skeletons, just to reinforce those units through the Deathly Invocation ability. So they're moving on to our units. We've got our battle line to start with, so that's 2 units of 40 skeleton warriors with the ancient spears. Now, I've talked about these a number of times, and obviously they're just fantastic for holding objectives. They're not bad in a fight if they get to attack first and they haven't taken many casualties. They can chuck out so many attacks. The only reason probably I'm not saying so much when they're offensive, because I usually play a lot of like Stormcast armies with 12 saves, you rolling 1s. So against things like that, their attacks just going to bounce off. However, everything else, their attacks should cause a lot of enemy casualties. So there are 2 blocks of skeletons, and then we've got again a unit of 5 dire wolves, like in the previous list. And then the reason why, you might think, why not just have, 3 blocks of 40 skeletons? Because basically one of the points of the other things. However, I think 120 skeletons, might sound really good, but I think it, and it probably will be really good, but I think it might be a bit too much. I have got that many skeletons, but I haven't ran it just because, number one, I don't want to move all those models, even if you've got movement trays. However, I feel like they... if you're playing, let's say, Battle for the Past, and you've got, 2 objectives in the middle of the board and then 1 objective on your territory. So you can put a block of skeletons on your territory and then 2 blocks on the ones in the middle. Yeah, fantastic, that's really good. Unless the enemy's got a lot of deep striking, you don't really need 40 on your back objective. 5 dire wolves will be fine. And that's why I've done it there, and it saves up points for other things. So after our battle line, we've then got our other unit, which is a unit of 2 Morgoth Harbingers with what are they called? Not Spirit Swords, Spirit Hellbards, there we go. Now, the reason we've got Harbingers is just for their bonus on charging, just because your Vampire Lord's going to be moving very fast anyway, so hopefully with the bonus to the charging the Harbingers get, they'll be able to keep up with your Vampire Lord when he makes his charge. And, move very quickly as well. However, my personal favourite is Morgoth's Archai, because they're the ones that I built, and I just prefer the look of their armour, and I like the 5-up mortal wound save. However, Harbingers might overall be better just because of their extra charge bonus. But again, it depends on what you're fighting. But that's why I've included the Harbingers in this to keep up with the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, and then to also keep up with our other behemoth, which is the Terrorgeist. Now, so the Terrorgeist here, and along with the Tomb Banshee, is just to make the most of the enemy's minuses to their bravery, especially with their screaming attacks. That's the whole point. Because if we go through the list, what we've got so far is we've got Overwhelming Dread, which makes the enemy -1 to their bravery, potentially -2. We've got let's just say the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, for example, because it's from the Legion of Blood, makes the enemy another -1, so that's -3. And then let's say we get one of your Scares and Warrior units, not necessarily in combat with the enemy unit or trying to basically shit themselves, but you get them within 6 inches of that, then they are another -1, so what's that one, -4? And then the Morgoth Harbingers, which certainly will be with your Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, are going to make the enemy another -1. So you're looking at a maximum of -5, and of course this is the perfect storm scenario, and don't go out and think, oh, I can do this and I'll make the enemy. so many minuses because, probably a lot of times it's not going to work, or, your Morgos Harbingers might be shot to death before they get to combat, or your Skeletons might never get within 6 inches of the enemy. However, if you do get this perfect storm scenario off, making enemy unit -5 bravery, I mean, just the battle shock alone would be horrendous. If they haven't got Inspiring Presence, or they haven't got the bloody Lord Citizen or Dracoff, no one's going to run away command ability. So yeah, just some battle shocks, mate. And then when you consider you're shooting from your Terrorgeist, from your Tomb Banshee, yeah, of course, if you want to play the whole, well, the enemy could just shoot Terrorgeist off the board, yeah, of course they could. But, they could do that with pretty much... You're going against an incredibly shooting army. Your enemy can, pick one of your units and practically shoot it off the board. However, if they do that, you've still got your little Tomb Banshee there, what isn't going to be a main key priority for the enemy, and her screaming, with the enemy being, let's say on average -3 bravery, at best -5, can do a lot of damage on her own, especially for an 80-point model. And then talking about, the enemy being able to snipe off key parts of your army and the board, they've got a lot of things they think about on this list. They've got, probably the smallest combat threat they've got is from the Morgos Harbingers. Then after that they've got the Terrorgeist, and after that they've got the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. So yeah, say they just shoot your Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon off the board best they can. Which, we want to say rolls a 1, and then obviously he's got some healing potential, and his death save, but let's say they do it, he's got 14 wounds to us, they've got, I don't know, let's just say loads of Skyfires. They then have to deal with, like I say, the Morgos Harbingers, the Terrorgeist, your 2 blocks of 40 Skeleton Warriors, which isn't the easiest thing to shift in the world, and then your Tomb Banshee as well, and then your Necromancers doing their spells. And then that brings us on to the last part of this list, which is the Beowulf of Vortex scenery piece we have for one of your Necromancers to summon. Now, there might be better ways to spend 100 points in your army. However, putting one of your Necromancers on this Beowulf Vortex just means that those spells you're trying to do, either Overwhelming Dread or Spectral Grasp, you'll be able to, if you can summon the Vortex, you'll be able to do these spells turn 1, hopefully. So, yeah, that's really good. Turn 1, making a scenery piece, enemy units from 3 inches of it, half the movement characteristics, just bugger up their first turn movement, is really good. And by him being able to cast that within, I think, 18 inches is standard, so now it's 36 inches, he doesn't have to be on the front line and summon the Vortex. He can summon the Vortex at the back of your territory in most of the battle plans, in a comfortable area where he's out of range of the enemy shooting, and things, like Slaughter Priest Prayers, loads of things that can do mortal wounds from him. He'll be out of reach from that, and he will still be able to target the enemy with the spells he wants to. So that's why we've got there. And of course, if the enemy does really want to shoot him off that Vortex, there'll be not much stopping them, because he's only got 6 up save, and he's not in range of any other death units to be able to pass on his damage to them. However, as Manistine said, that if you've got so much stuff in the enemy's face, there's no way they'll be able to go, you know what, I'm not even going to care about the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, or that Terrorgeist, or the Morgos Harbingers. I'm just going to go, right, that Necromancer's going to die. And, if they did think like that because they were somehow an idiot, fair play to them. They can kill that Necromancer for all I care, and let all the other stuff get in their face. So the Necromancer is going to be fairly safe, is what I'm trying to say. And then that sort of completes the list. So, like I say, we've got so many minuses to the enemy's bravery here. We've got the Terrorgeist and the Tomb Banshee to take advantage of it. We've also got the Terrorgeist and the Vampire Lord and the Zombie Dragon, along with the Morgos Harbingers, to get into the combat and do, lots of damage to the enemy. Of course, the unit of 2 Morgos Harbingers isn't, a huge amount of damage output, because, I prefer to take a unit of 4. However, they have got the Spirit Hellbirds, which means that that's a total of, 6 attacks, freeze and freeze, -2 rend, 3 damage. So pretty nice there. The Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, of course, is very powerful in the Legion of Blood with all its attacks, making the enemy -1 to hit it. And then reroll and save rolls a 1, makes it much more survivable, especially with the Overwhelming Dread spell from the other Necromancer, which can make the enemy another -1 to hit, or potentially -2. However, there's obviously flaws in this list, and there's problems with it. The main one, probably, that I can just say off the bat is it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 deployments, which Yeah, like there's some armies there of like 15 deployments or something. However, 9 deployments means that you're more than likely not going to be going first, or get to choose who goes first, really. So you have to sort of plan ahead, going like, I'm not going to be able to deploy my whole army first, so I have to respond to being able to go, I have to go last, or I'm elected to go first. You have to learn how to deal with it, in particular in scenarios where it's not going to be good to go first or second. However, if you can get enough practice in with that disadvantage, you can learn to try and overcome it. Like I said in my Legion of Knight lists. However, there might be the odd game where you get to be able to choose who goes first, and obviously it'll be a nice change and take advantage of that. The other thing is that this has got 1980 points, so you might get a triumph in there. However, don't come to expect it all the time. It's probably a 50-50 you'll get the triumph, but like I've talked about before, a triumph, as long as you can remember to use it, is really effective. Another thing about this list is, yes, you've got ways to make the enemy, minuses to hit, particularly in combat, but there's not too many ways to make them minus the hit from shooting. So we go against a lot of Skyfires or something like that. I did want to include Bat Swarms in the army to try and make the enemy minuses to hit and shooting. However, I just didn't really have points for it. So we're without it, and I mean, you are taking advantage of the enemy being minus their bravery by having the Tomb Banshee and the Terrorgeist. However, I would have liked to have, at least 2 Tomb Banshees in there, along with the Terrorgeist, but again, didn't have points for it. Of course, you can take the Bow and Vortex out if you think, that's not worth its points, you've got better things you can spend it on. However, I wanted to, add it in there and see how well it can do. And then, yeah, sure, a unit of 2 Morghast, Harm just isn't that much to shout about because, like I say, they are good. However, I'm just so used to running units of 4 Morghast Archai, so the same Morghast. I'm just used to double their damage output. And you might go, oh well, Morghast, you mainly should take them in Grand Host and Nagash. You feel like you're not getting the most use out of them in the other legions because they're missing out on the extra attack. However, they are still pretty good, and as I've mentioned, in this Legion of Blood, we are just trying to make the enemy as minuses to the bravery as possible, especially in this list. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I say, it might feel a little bit disjointed. I mean, you've got the Necromancer on Bale and Vortex, and then you've got your Vampire on Zombie Dragon card, quite far forward, so you might not be in range of your Skeletons to bring back, the Skeletons resurrecting through Deathly Invocation, and then other Necromancer can't do it because he's on the Bale and Vortex. That leaves you with 1 Necromancer in between the Skeleton Warrior units to, try and bring back as much as you can in your hero phase, as the Tomb Banshee doesn't have the Deathly Invocation ability. However, you still have that 1 hero who can do that. You have your Grave Sites that can do it, because remember, your Grave Sites will only be bringing back your Skeleton Warriors and potentially your Direballs in this army. So I think you still got quite a lot of resurrection there. And then last things really to say about these lists, including Neferata, is that these are just lists I've came up with just spending a bit of time this morning trying to think of lists I could come up with. Legion of Blood, because I'm not saying it's the weakest Legion, however, it does feel like it's not the strongest. And the reason I don't want to call it weak is because compared to a lot of other armies out there, it's got lots of tools and it's got lots of advantages. Compared to armies that do have allegiance abilities in the General's Handbook 2017, or there's a lot of armies out there that don't even have allegiance abilities. So it's got good advantage against a lot of them. It's just playing against things like Stormcast, Blades of Khorne, Siege. It might be a little bit like the underdog compared to them. The other thing to mention about this list is obviously I don't have any Blood Knights in. It is because I don't really like Blood Knights anymore. I mean, and my view on this is completely incorrect because I don't have any Blood Knights and I've never played with them. However, I'll tell you my views anyway, because since you can't bring back a model a turn, I feel like, obviously, that was their main big thing they had. And some people said that was overpowered, some people said it was broken, and, to some extent, maybe it was, bringing back, one of those Blood Knights, each one of your hero phase, maybe that was too much. However, there are so many different other things out there that are really powerful. I don't think the Blood Knight ability bringing back an extra model was, more broken than any of the other stuff out there. I feel like it was just quite powerful. And since they've lost that, that was their main thing. So then you think, okay, let's just look at them as mainly just shock cavalry. You know, they get in there, they charge, maybe they do a retreat and they charge the following turn. And, you know, with their swords and lances, when on the charge, they do D3 damage, and that's not bad at all. And then, you know, in the Legion of Blood, they get an extra attack, and then there are some battalions out there. Well, I say there's some battalions out there. I mean, there's one battalion out there that includes them, Prince of Hordrai, and you know, it makes them more better. However, I feel like with Blood Knights, there's so many things you have to put in place to make them decent. You know, to make them much more decent and make them worth their points, really. So that's why I decided not to take them. And then the other reason I haven't got, you know, things like battalions and stuff in here is because, like I say, we've got the, you know, the Blood Knight battalion with that and Prince of Hordrai. However, I'm not really a big fan of that. I feel like that's it's a bit like the Legion of the Knight Ancient Cunning, I believe, that ability they have where they can set up units and they come off the board edges during the game. But the Prince of Hordrai's, is it the Dreadkeep Battalion, I think it might be called? I feel like it's just a bit, doesn't amaze me. I mean, yes, it can make Blood Dragons a lot more better, a lot more, you know, stronger, a lot more punchiness. However, they've got to remain in a range of that board edge. If you obviously tell the enemy what board edge you're going to use. If you're going to think about using the enemy's, you know, rear board edge, they're just going to go, right, okay, that's a really good battalion, and that's where all your models are. I'm just going to deploy all along the back line and stop you coming on. Because if they know that's what your battalion does, they will do that. Because if I was fighting that battalion, I would do that 100%. Yeah, sure, half my army won't be able to do anything because they're just sitting on the back of the board. However, it's stopping your guys coming on. And even if you found another way to bring your guys on, I'm just not a fan of it. So that's one battalion. The next battalion is Neferata's, which, to be honest, for 70 points, you can't really complain what it does, because 70 points for a battalion, it's not bad at all. However, I'm not a fan of it either, because it all revolves around the Bloodseeker Palanquin, which is an okay model. Its rules are somewhat dependent. If you've got a lot of soul blot in your army, it's useful. If you don't, it's not useful at all. So it all revolves around this Bloodseeker Palanquin, which either makes Neferata better in combat, because I think she can reroll failed hit rolls against a hero. She's within, I think it's 9 inches of this Bloodseeker Palanquin, which, you know, fairly good chance of that happening. However, she needs to target a hero. Yes, she's got other abilities that suggest her to attack heroes, but, you know, that doesn't happen all the time. You know, you can't always choose what you're going up against in combat. And then the other ability the battalion gives is a 4-inch extra move to units from the battalion that, again, I think within like 8 inches of it, which I think are a bit nah. And I mean, you've got the, you know, like I say, movement is so important in Age of Sigmar. However, I feel like this battalion, and again, you need Neferata, you need the 2 Vampire Lords, can be on Zombie Dragons, they don't have to, you know, and one can be on and one doesn't have to, you know, have a dragon. And then you need the Bloodseeker Palanquin. So that's quite a few, because to be honest, if I was going to take this, I'd take 2 Vampire Lords and Zombie Dragons, Neferata, then the Bloodseeker Palanquin. And then that's loads and loads and loads of points gone already. You know, you don't really have many points left. So I'm not a huge fan of this. And yes, you could go, right, okay, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take the cheaper version of it. So Neferata, 2 Vampire Lords on foot, and then the Bloodseeker Palanquin. That still comes to quite a pricey amount. And yeah, the Vampire Lords, you know, on foot or on a Nightmare or a Winged, whatever variation you bring, you know, they're all right. In the Legion of Blood, they'll be making, you know, 5 attacks, freeze and freeze, I think, -1 D3 damage. Sounds really good. However, when I attack my Vampire Lords, they just don't happen to do anything, and I just really keep them as support units. So yeah, that's the reasons why I'm not too much of a fan of the battalion. Sorry, I just rambled on a little bit there. However, I just thought it'd be important to tell you my thoughts on them and the reasons I don't take Blood Knights. Because I think instead of taking Blood Knights, I'd rather just take, you know, Morghast, because I think they're a lot better, you know, Harbingers or Archive. Not really too bothered. So yeah, that's pretty much the reasons why I haven't included any battalions. And yes, of course, they make your army a lot lesser drops, and, you know, they give you an extra artifact. However, I feel like if I was to do it, I'd be building the army around a battalion I'm not a fan of anyway. So what would be the point, you know, in that? So those are the lists. Sorry if I went on a little bit, like I said, of a ramble at the end, but I was just honestly telling you my thoughts about the battalions and why I didn't include them, in case you wondered why I didn't. And then, so these lists, commonality between them is they both have 1980 points and a chance to get a triumph. Neferata's one's more fun. The one without Neferata is probably the one I'm more likely to take, just to see what it's like, because I haven't tried out the Legion of Blood yet. So, as always with my lists I've put on the channel and stuff, they are just my thoughts. You know, they are more than likely going to be completely wrong. If you'd like to disagree with me, put it down in the comments below, and I'd like to hear your reasons for what you would take instead, so we can all learn together. I think that's very important. But I thought it'd just be quite good idea to chuck a few lists up here just to get the ideas going and see what we all can come up with. And that was the main reason behind it. So like I say, these are just my opinions, just something I looked at. I'm sure once I play the Legion of Blood, I'm going to probably change my mind about a few things here. However, this is something just to get me to focus on to start with. So, at the end of this video, I'd just like to say, if you've got any suggestions for videos or anything like you would like to see, put it down in the comments down below, and I'll certainly have a look into it and try and get that done soon. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and comment down below, as this does always help me make as many videos as possible and is really encouraging. And I thank you very much for watching, and until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.